The house she once called home had become a war zone. Her mother's screams, her father's icy silence, and her older sister's scornful gaze struck deeper than any blade. She was pregnant, alone, and to her family, a walking disgrace. "You've ruined our lives," her mother shouted, throwing a bag of tattered clothes out the door. Her father stood still, arms crossed, never looking her in the eyes. His silence hurt more than the insults. And the baby's father? Vanished the second he heard about the pregnancy, called her crazy, blocked her on everything. Just months ago, she dreamed of a future with him. Now she was standing on the sidewalk in the cold rain, hands on her belly, tears in her eyes. A life was beginning inside her, while hers seemed to be ending right there. With a shattered heart and soul, she took her first step away from the only place she ever knew, now just a memory. No home, no plan, no one. The hours that followed felt like sinking into a nightmare with no end. The city ignored her completely. People walked by quickly, turning their faces as they saw her swollen belly and wet clothes. Every step was painful. Her feet ached, her stomach growled, and the baby moved restlessly inside as if sensing her fear. The park bench where she tried to rest was cold and filthy. The wind slapped her cheeks like invisible knives. A group of teenagers laughed at her. One tossed a soda can near her feet. "Get a job, loser," he yelled. She didn't respond, just wept quietly. The loneliness was deafening. She remembered the empty promises of the baby's father, the way he used to hold her, the lies. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "If you're woman enough to get pregnant, you're woman enough to survive alone." No one answered her calls. No one replied to her texts. No door opened. It felt like the whole world had abandoned her. 7 months pregnant, freezing, starving, and scared she might not survive the night. Still, she tried. Desperation hadn't killed her will. Yet. She walked to the house of an old high school friend, rang the bell. Silence. She messaged a co-worker from her last job. "No data right now, text me later," was the only response. At a local shelter, they told her, "Only beds for women without children. Come back tomorrow with a medical report." Cold and heartless. She wanted to scream, to punch something, but all she did was sit on the sidewalk and hug her belly. The last bit of hope flickered out like a candle in the wind. She wondered if they were all right. Maybe she didn't deserve anything better. Maybe this was her punishment. She laid down in a corner near the street, curled up with the few clothes she had left. But then, like a figure out of a dream, an old woman appeared. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" asked the woman in a voice as fragile as her hands. The girl didn't respond, just cried. No strength to lie, no pride to hide behind. The old woman pulled a small piece of bread and a bottle of water from her worn bag. "I don't have much, but there's a man. Lives in a cabin at the end of the road. He's helped people before. Lost his wife not too long ago. Folks say his heart's still kind." That little flicker of compassion reignited something in her. She ate the bread with shaking hands, whispered a tearful thank you, and looked toward the road. Rain fell again. The sky cried with her. But now there was somewhere to go. One last hope. Maybe one last chance. Each step up that muddy road echoed inside her soul. With every flash of lightning, she saw the outline of a house standing at the hill's crest. A new flame of hope flickered inside her. The gate was slightly open. The lights were off, but smoke curled gently from the chimney. She hesitated. What if it was dangerous? But the fear of going back, of hunger, of the cold, of rejection, was stronger than the fear of the unknown. She pushed the gate, climbed the porch stairs, and knocked 3 times. Nothing. She tried again. Silence. As she turned to leave, the door creaked open slowly. A tall man with tired eyes and a rough beard stood in the doorway. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice low and hoarse. She didn't answer. Her knees gave out and she crumbled to the floor, sobbing. He didn't ask questions. He simply picked her up gently and brought her inside. The house was warm. It smelled of firewood and sorrow. The door shut behind them with a soft click, sealing the start of something that would change both their lives forever. The fireplace crackled softly, casting long shadows on the wooden walls of the old house. The silence between them was almost too heavy to bear. He gently placed her on the couch. No questions, no accusations, just quiet observation. His eyes, a cold steel gray, carried a grief she recognized. He looked like someone who had lost not just a loved one, but also a part of himself. She didn't know whether to cry from relief or fear. He handed her a blanket, a cup of warm tea, and finally said, "You can stay, for now." Then he walked away, as if his past weighed more than his body could carry. The house was too quiet, as if the walls themselves were guarding secrets. Old portraits lined the hallways. Furniture sat untouched under thin layers of dust, and the air smelled faintly of dried roses. Above the fireplace hung a photo of a young, smiling woman beside the man, who now looked like a ghost. The curtains were always closed. A hallway led to several doors, but one was different, locked with 2 bolts. She paused near it, feeling an odd chill down her spine. This wasn't just grief, it was something else. Something that didn't want to be remembered. Meals were awkwardly silent. He cooked without saying a word, set the table, and ate while staring out the window. She tried to start conversations once or twice, but his replies were short. Yes, no, maybe. He seemed to have forgotten how to talk to people, yet his actions contradicted the coldness in his eyes. He always left a glass of milk on her nightstand, made sure the water was warm before she woke, kept a hallway light on through the night. Small gestures that spoke louder than words and left her even more unsettled. One morning she awoke to a strange sound from upstairs. She crept up barefoot and found him kneeling in front of the locked door. He was crying, not loudly but quietly, painfully. In his hand was a key he never used. When he noticed her, he quickly stood and walked away without a word. The sight haunted her. Had she witnessed something sacred? Or did he want her to know, without saying it, that there was more to this place than met the eye? From that day on, something shifted. He spoke more. Words became sentences. Sentences became stories. He told her about the accident, about how he lost his wife, how time had stopped for him the day she died. That until she arrived, no one had ever entered this house. Something about you made me open the door, he confessed. Her eyes welled with tears. For the first time, someone looked at her without judgment or disdain. 2 broken souls, slowly recognizing their pain in each other. But she knew he wasn't just mourning, he was hiding something, and sooner or later the truth would come out. On her 3rd night in the house, she woke up with a jolt. It wasn't a nightmare, it was a noise, a soft, scratching sound from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable creak of a slowly closing door. Silence returned, thick and suffocating, as if the house itself was holding its breath. She sat up in bed for minutes, heart pounding, trying to convince herself it was just the wind. But deep down, she knew. In the morning, she found the widower in the kitchen, pale with dark circles under his eyes. "Did you hear something last night?" she asked. He shook his head without even looking at her. Tension grew in every corner of the house. One door was always locked, but one morning she saw him coming out of it, with a key in his hand and red-rimmed eyes. She pretended not to see, but it ate away at her. When he left for groceries, she wandered the house, guilt gnawing at her, but curiosity stronger. Behind a picture frame, she found a photo, his and a woman's, but her face was torn. Inside a closet, a locked box. Under the hallway rug, a faint dark stain, barely noticeable, like something scrubbed, but never forgotten. The house whispered, and what it said was disturbing. Neighbors, few and far between, seemed to know more than they were willing to say. At the local market, she heard murmurs. "Is that her? Poor girl, has no idea." An old man approached her, leaned in and whispered, "If I were you, I wouldn't stay too long in that house." But before she could ask more, he was gone. It was like they feared being overheard. When she confronted the widower, he answered with a sharp tone, "Don't believe everything people say." His voice was steady, but it trembled. That shake, more than his words, made her uneasy. She started having dreams, vivid, eerie, always the same woman, the one from the photo, staring at her in silence, eyes glassy, sometimes crying, sometimes bleeding. One night she woke up to a scream, but it wasn't hers. It came from upstairs. She ran, but everything was in place, except the locked door was now slightly ajar. Inside was a woman's bedroom, untouched, as if someone still lived there. A hairbrush on the vanity, an open bottle of perfume, dried flowers in a vase, and on the mirror, written in lipstick, "He lies." From that moment on, she lived on edge. The widower became distant again, as if sensing she had seen too much. He remained gentle, but his eyes were different, and she noticed his medications, strong psychiatric prescriptions. One day she found a shredded medical report, prolonged grief disorder, delusional episodes. Her mind spiraled. Could he have done something to his wife? Was she now a replacement, a target, or just a pawn in something far darker than she imagined? What once felt like shelter now felt like a trap, The following days felt like walking on emotional glass. They both moved cautiously around each other inside the house that seemed to breathe secrets. She didn't know if she could trust him, and clearly he didn't know what to do with her presence. The silence between them was heavy, thick, and tense. During one foggy breakfast, she asked, "You still talk to her, don't you?" He didn't answer right away. He just gripped his mug like he was holding onto his past. "Every day," he finally said. "She listens better dead than most people do alive." That answer shook her, not because of the grief but because of its weight. She knew that depth. Though life was growing inside her, she felt dead inside, abandoned by family, betrayed by the man who once promised her forever. It wasn't just the pregnancy that burdened her, it was the feeling of being disposable. She admitted it one rainy night while he stirred the fireplace. "You know what hurts the most? Not that he left. It's knowing if I disappeared, no one would notice." He looked at her for the first time in days. "I would notice," he said, and in that moment, something broke and something else was born. But their closeness wasn't smooth. It was painful, full of friction, like two wounds pressing into each other before healing. During an argument about a broken dish, she screamed, "You still live with her. This house is a shrine." And he snapped, "And you think you're alive? You're only here because the world threw you away." The silence that followed was brutal. Her eyes filled with tears. He realized the damage too late, tried to apologize, but she had already stormed upstairs, slamming the door. That day, they both bled. The next morning he made breakfast and left a note. "I'm not ready to understand you, but I'm trying." It was the first time she cried from relief, not pain. From that point on, they began to truly talk about what they'd lost, about what broke them. He told her his wife died in an accident, but something about the way he told it didn't sit right. A pause, a hesitation, as if even he didn't fully believe the story he kept telling himself. And she felt it. Beneath the grief, there was something darker, something closer to guilt. That night, she had another nightmare, the wife again. But this time, the woman said, "He loved me," but his love turned into obsession. She woke up sweating, heart racing. It didn't feel like a dream, it felt like a warning. The next day, he asked her if she believed in coincidences. "No," she said. "I think everything has a reason, even pain." He just smiled, but the smile never reached his eyes. Two broken people trying to save each other, while both were still hiding the one thing that kept them trapped, the truth. It was as if the universe sensed she was starting to rebuild herself and decided to strike again. News of her staying at the widower's house spread through the small town like wildfire. One nasty post in a local gossip group was enough to summon the vultures. First came her sister, the same one who turned her back during her darkest hour. She showed up at the door pretending to care, but her smile was fake and her eyes were hungry for drama. "Just wanted to see if you're okay. We've heard some things." Within minutes, she was already fishing for details. Was the widower rich? Did he inherit everything from his dead wife? Was her sister planning to take advantage? The protagonist slammed the door in her face without hesitation. The next day, the baby's father returned. His nerve was unbelievable. He came with cheap flowers and even cheaper apologies, claimed he had time to think, that the baby needed his dad, and that she had to understand he was confused. But the truth was obvious. Someone told him she might be living with a wealthy man. He only came back when he thought there was something to gain, and when he tried to walk into the house, the widower stood in his way, cold and firm. "She's not alone," he said. It was the first time the widower truly stepped in. Her ex backed off, but not without warning. This isn't over. Tension gripped the town. She noticed the stares, the whispers, the fake smiles. Rumors started spreading like poison, that she was gold digging, that she drove the man's wife to the grave, that she was always manipulative. What hurt the most was knowing these lies came from people who once called her a friend, neighbors who had eaten at her table. Her past, which she had buried, was now being used as a weapon. And she began to suspect that her ex was behind it all, pulling strings, poisoning minds, trying to isolate her again. But he didn't realize. She wasn't the same crying girl he once abandoned. Now, she had someone beside her, even if that someone carried dark shadows of his own. Then came the final blow. A threat in an unmarked envelope left on the porch. Inside, a photo of her, visibly pregnant, taken from a distance. And a message, "If you don't leave, I'll make you." The widower wanted to call the police, but she said no. This wasn't just a threat, it was bait. They wanted her scared. They wanted her to run, but she wouldn't. Not this time. This time they would be the ones running, and for the first time, something changed in her eyes. It wasn't just sadness anymore, it was controlled rage, and revenge began to take root. That night, she looked into the widower's eyes and said, "They broke me, but now they'll pay for every tear I cried." He didn't speak, but he nodded. A silent pact was made in that moment. 2 broken souls, 2 lives stained by pain, and now 1 alliance. Because when life pushes the weak to the ground, some stay down, but others learn to rise with sharper teeth. And she was about to show everyone who mocked, abandoned, and threatened her that she came back to win. Everything felt too calm, like the silence before a storm. But inside the house, there was no peace anymore, only tension. Since the threat, she barely slept. Her steps became sharper, her eyes constantly alert. The widower, on the other hand, seemed restless, more than usual. He barely spoke, locked himself in one of the rooms for hours, and kept glancing at his phone like waiting for a call that never came. Until one night, he summoned her to the living room. "We need to talk, but first, there's something you need to see." From an old cabinet, he pulled out a heavy wooden box, sealed with iron latches. Inside, documents, dozens of them. She picked one up with shaking hands. It was a sales contract, signed by her child's father, another one, signed by her sister, and then another, a financial report bearing her mother's signature. All of them were tied to the company the widower had inherited from his wife, and all of them pointed to fraud, embezzlement, and betrayal. "The people who hurt you, they were involved with my wife. And it wasn't just betrayal, they destroyed her, drained her. And when she found out, it was already too late." The room spun. It all made sense now. She wasn't just rejected, she was removed, silenced. They knew she could ruin everything, and now she knew too much. Time began to race. A new business deal between the old partners was about to close. In 72 hours, once finalized, all the dirty paperwork would vanish, replaced by clean, legal transactions. If they finalize this contract, not only will they disappear with everything, but they'll be protected. And we'll look like the crazy ones. The silence made sense now. They weren't just ignoring her, they were covering their tracks. The only way to win now was to stop them. The clock started ticking. Despite his strange demeanor, the widower revealed a sharp, calculating mind. He confessed he had the documents for months but never had the courage to use them. "I thought grief was stopping me, but it was fear." But she wasn't afraid anymore. Her pain had become her fuel. Together, they decided. In 48 hours, they would deliver everything to a lawyer, a former business partner of the widower's late wife, someone who still believed in the truth. But then, the lawyer disappeared. That's when urgency turned into panic. His name was Marcos. He was supposed to receive the documents that morning, but he vanished. No calls, no replies. Only one cryptic message sent at 3:41 a.m. They know. What should have been a clean move now felt like a survival game. If someone found out about the documents, then time was running out. She looked at the widower, who trembled with rage. "They're scared of me now, and people who are scared strike first." And in that dimly lit kitchen, they understood. This was war, and their only weapon was the truth. It was raining hard that night, as if the sky knew what was about to unfold. The silence between them wasn't comforting anymore. It was charged, waiting. She knew something was hidden, something dark and deep, and he could no longer hold it in. He paced the room until he finally stopped in front of her. "If you're going to face this with me, you need to know everything, all of it." She nodded, her chest tightening. He pulled out a small key from his pocket and said, "Come with me." They climbed to the attic, a place she had never seen. It was hot, dark, and quiet. There, he opened an old chest, and inside were photos, recordings, files, and a gun. But what chilled her most wasn't the weapon. It was the first folder, documents signed by his wife, dated after her supposed death. She stared at him, horrified. "Your wife didn't die the way they said, did she?" He lowered his head. Then he told her. His wife hadn't died in an accident. She had uncovered the corporate fraud, and they silenced her. But before they did, she left copies of everything. Proof, contracts, audio, hidden with him. She knew they were going to kill her. They didn't just steal her money, they killed her. And made it look like an accident. But she saw it coming. She left me everything, and made me promise to wait, to only act when someone came along with more to lose than me. I waited for you. Her world spun. He kept speaking. "When you showed up here, broken, alone. I knew. You weren't random. You were the trigger, the missing piece. They hurt you just like they hurt her. And now, we have everything to take them down. She didn't know whether to cry, scream, or run. It felt like a movie, but his eyes left no room for doubt, pain, truth, and decision. You think I took you in out of pity? No, I took you in because I knew you'd have the courage when I couldn't. And you did. She looked through the recordings, recognized the voices, her mother, her sister, her ex, all of them negotiating, laughing, signing dirty deals while speaking about the late wife like she was disposable. If she opens her mouth, we'll handle it, just like before, said her baby's father. That's when everything changed. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a witness. She was part of a silent war that had been boiling for years. She was the final piece, and now she was the key to justice, but she was also a target. The widower looked at her one last time before shutting the attic light. Now that you know, there's no going back, she replied, steady and cold. I don't want to. Let's end them. And there in the attic where secrets had been buried for years, a new version of her was born, a woman ready to turn pain into punishment. The plan was executed with surgical precision. The protagonist and the widower knew this was their only shot. They played their final card, the raw, documented truth. The missing lawyer was found hours later, locked in a motel room, drugged but alive. They tried to shut me up, but it was too late, he whispered, handing over the files he'd managed to send before being intercepted. That night sealed the fate of everyone involved. The protagonist then recorded a video, but it wasn't a rant. It was a narrated dossier, complete with documents, names, dates, voices, everything. She scheduled the upload for the exact hour her enemies planned to sign their victory contract. At exactly 2:37 p.m. on a Friday, while the traitors toasted to their new chapter, the video exploded across the internet. Within an hour, it had over 100,000 views. Her voice, steady and calm, sliced through every lie like a blade. The ex-boyfriend, her mother, her sister, all exposed for fraud, corruption, coercion, and potentially even manslaughter. The audio clips were devastating. She won't handle the pressure much longer. Let her give birth on the street. We'll figure it out after. Words spoken with cruelty, now exposed to the entire country. The reaction was instant and furious. In just a few hours, her name was trending everywhere. Journalists, influencers, even political figures called for immediate investigations. The contract was frozen. Her ex was fired. Her sister lost her government position for ethical violations. Her mother, who once paraded as a model Christian, was caught selling private information for cash. Each one of them fell in their own way, but all of them fell by their own words. The most brilliant part, there were no lies, only silence, finally broken. Of course, threats came, but she was no longer alone. The public stood with her. People who once ignored her now called her a symbol of strength. Interview offers poured in, but she refused them all. She only uploaded one final message: the revenge you fear isn't me. It's the truth, and the truth, it always finds a way. That line sealed her place in the hearts of thousands. The widower at her side didn't smile, but his eyes were at peace. For the first time in years, the opponents tried to fight back. Denials, legal threats, smear campaigns. But it was all too late. The proof lived in the cloud in backup drives with journalists and lawyers. Immutable, digital, clean. The protagonist, once homeless, abandoned, and pregnant, was now untouchable. And the sweetest part? She never screamed, never begged, never fought dirty. She just spoke the truth and watched the empire of lies collapse. The town was no longer the same. Those who once mocked her now lowered their heads when she walked by. It wasn't fear, it was shame. The woman they once called disgrace, crazy, and gold digger now walked with straight posture, sharp eyes, and a soft smile. But not a smug smile. It was the calm expression of someone who survived, overcame, and knew exactly what she was worth. Her name, once whispered with ridicule, was now spoken with admiration. And the best part? She never had to raise her voice once. Her former enemies tried to recover. Her ex-boyfriend, desperate, showed up saying he was sorry, that he had changed, and wanted to be part of the child's life. She simply said, "He'll have a father, but not a coward," then turned away without another word. Her sister tried to manipulate the media, only to be exposed live on air. Her mother took the cruelest route, accusing her of doing it all out of revenge. In a rare public statement, the protagonist replied with calm, "This wasn't revenge, it was truth. Pain doesn't excuse cruelty. The widower, lighter now by her side, was the only one who truly understood the weight of it all. They had both lost a lot, but gained something priceless, a second chance no one else could take. With the company assets recovered and the business back in rightful hands, the protagonist made an unexpected move. She renounced her family's inheritance completely. She left the name, the blood, and everything it came with. Instead, she launched a foundation named after the widower's late wife, a tribute to the woman who left the evidence. They threw me away like I was nothing. Now I'll turn that nothing into something that helps women like me. That sentence made headlines and became the slogan of a movement. Her revenge wasn't about humiliation. It was about rising into someone her enemies could never become, respected, admired, and untouchable. They didn't just lose money or status, they lost the ability to pretend they were innocent, and that for them was the ultimate punishment. She now walked those same streets, still pregnant, but with her head held high, knowing nothing could shake her again. Not because she won a battle, but because she refused to carry hate into her future. The town, once her prison, was now the stage of her rise. The woman who once slept on a park bench had become a beacon of strength, and her pain. That became her legacy. She won, not with rage but with silence, elegance, and justice. Months had passed since the downfall of the traitors. The scandal still echoed quietly in the town, but the noise had faded. In its place, respect had settled. The protagonist walked slowly through a tree-lined path, her belly heavy, steps deliberate. By her side, the widower carried a basket of flowers. They were heading to the cemetery, not out of grief, but out of gratitude. At the grave of his late wife, the woman who had left behind the key to the truth, she knelt, placed a flower, and whispered, "Thank you for giving me strength, even without knowing me." It was there she realized the cycle had closed, not through revenge, but justice. Not with hatred, but with healing. The widower looked at her gently. "You didn't save me. You reminded me I could be saved." He held her hand, and for the first time, she felt she was exactly where she belonged. Not by chance, but by purpose. 2 lives broken by lies, now bound by courage, and a baby on the way, a new beginning, free from the sins of the past. Back at home, they found an envelope in the mailbox, an invitation to speak at a national women's resilience conference. She hesitated, but the widower smiled and said, "The world needs your voice." He was right. On stage, in front of hundreds, she told her story, not with drama, but with truth. At the end, she said, "They asked if I got revenge. I say no. I survived. I rebuilt. And that was my greatest revenge." The audience rose to their feet, not for the show, but for the truth. And in that moment, she understood. The pain wasn't wasted. She became a bridge, a light, an example. The baby was born days later, a boy, strong, healthy, with his father's eyes, but most importantly with the spirit of a mother who had walked through fire and returned whole. The widower held him and said, "This boy will grow up knowing the power of truth and of courage." She cried, not from pain, but from peace. Was her story over? No, it had just begun. But now, without chains, guilt, or fear, she had a home, a new family, and a mission to inspire, to prove that no one is defined by the pain they suffered, but by the strength with which they rise. You don't have to become like those who hurt you to win. The sweetest revenge is being happy, free, and impossible to break again. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt pain, rejection, or betrayal, know this: you can rise too. Don't let others write your ending. Share this video, leave a like, and comment below. Have you ever lived something similar? What would you have done differently? And remember, the truth always finds its way.